You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Well, good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday evening to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report. Jamie Allman here, pleased and privileged, as always, to be with you here on NewsTalkSTL 101.9 94.1. And, you know, the Trump supporters are flocking to the polls right now. Absentee ballots at an all-time high among Republican voters, and Trump supporters are now not waiting until Election Day, and that's because they don't need any more information. They're ready to rock and roll. This election is over. We just don't know the exact outcome or when that outcome is going to be decided. Believe me, once it turns towards Trump, they're going to slow roll this thing and slow walk this thing into Christmas time. I promise you that. We'll see how it all goes. It looks like, though, the voting will be overwhelming. And that's just my opinion about it. I can see the numbers. I bring you anecdotal evidence all the time. As if you didn't need any more reason to flock to the polls. I don't know any Trump supporters who are not going to vote. That's not our problem, is a lack of turnout, and certainly won't be. But if those who might still be on the fence, maybe they're not traditional Trump supporters, keep in mind that rally at Madison Square Garden, 47% of the people there, 47% that they could calculate at least, had never been to a Trump rally before. So it's a whole new group of individuals who are now, I guess, could be considered Trump supporters. And those individuals are going to be even more fired up to go to the polls after what happened yesterday with not only Joe Biden, but also Kamala Harris. It was indeed a dumpster fire on all different levels. And the media right now is just the minute Joe Biden said it,
In Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscious.
So calling, of course, Trump supporters garbage. And the media just absolutely fell all over itself to immediately try and act like he didn't say it. But he did. It was, of course, Biden's deplorable moment. He hasn't necessarily been out on the campaign trail, and I don't think Harris has wanted him to be. But he's destroying any hope that Kamala Harris has all by his lonesome. This CNN panelist got, as they said on Twitter, bodied by the conservative on CNN, Scott Jennings, after he chalked the Biden statement up to a stutter.
As someone who had a stutter growing up, it's very obvious to me that there's an apostrophe at the end of supporters there. He was.
It's not obvious to anybody that there is an apostrophe at the end of supporters there.
Referring to the garbage spewed by supporters, not simply the supporters themselves. But Joe Biden has been on the campaign trail. He's best getting ice cream in Maryland like he was today. He's best showing moments of empathy in Arizona like he was last week.
And that's interesting how, and this guy, it's interesting how he even is admitting that Biden is best when he's getting ice cream in Maryland. That's not a compliment by any stretch of the imagination. And these people all are such flat earthers, they actually believe that it is a compliment.
Best with union folks, as he was in Pittsburgh last week as well. You use people where they are best. You put Obama in a big arena, you put Michelle in a big arena, and you put Joe Biden in front of a bunch of union people doing retail politics.
You could make the argument that they would be fine if Joe Biden wasn't anywhere near a microphone between now and next Tuesday.
Here comes the body.
Let me just accept the most charitable framing of this, which you just gave.
Yeah.
Why is he sitting in front of a laptop at the exact same moment Kamala Harris is out on his backyard trying to give the closing argument to her campaign? What in the world is he doing? Now, I don't accept your framing of it personally, because I actually do believe he, Harris, the Democratic Party, and most of their campaign do believe that half the country is garbage. They've also said people who go to Trump rallies are Nazis. And so it's pretty apparent the disdain with which they hold half of the country in.
All the chickens start to, or that's a turkey, isn't it? Sorry. Is it a turkey or a chicken? Isn't it a turkey?
That's a turkey.
Okay. Well, they're jive turkeys anyway, those people are. So chicken, turkey, whatever, they're all just kind of like all running around like crazy. And this trying to cover for this is ridiculous. Jennings brings up a really good point. Why was Joe Biden sitting there on his computer while Kamala Harris is 7 feet away from him? Doesn't make any sense. Of course, Trump didn't waste any time pouncing on this one anyway.
That's what it says. That's what it says. So you have, remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable, that didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know. You have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't. And I'm convinced that he likes me more than he likes Kamala.
Yeah.
Convinced.
Oh, I'm
but
sure.
That's a terrible thing.
After all that the Harris campaign has done to basically throw him under the bus and treat him like garbage, really, in the end. But the worst part of the day actually didn't come until Kamala Harris gave her speech. And where she all but admitted that if she's elected president, she's really not going to be the president, per se. She's going to rely on experts for her leadership, which is an admission I'm sure she didn't intend. But because Kamala Harris is stupid, this doesn't occur to her how bad this sounds.
And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress.
Yeah, okay, so if you're not looking to score political points, because after all, in the end, that's what this is all about. Somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. There is no, for instance, middle ground when it comes to tax cuts, when it comes to protecting our border, when it comes to staying out of unnecessary wars, when it comes to creating jobs and prosperity. This isn't something where you're supposed to go and seek the opinions of someone else. I mean, I know that you know that when you vote for Trump, you're voting for a leader. You're expecting Trump to be the lead dog on this one. You're expecting him to do what he says he's going to do. You don't want to hear from him that, well, once I get in there, I'm really not wanting to win necessarily. On my theories and on my political philosophy, I just want to seek common ground. So I'm going to spend most of my time asking other people what they think, which isn't leadership. Although, obviously, you know, you all know at the corporate level and things like that, we all know that to a certain degree there is a communal type of goal in excellence and in moving the ball forward and that kind of thing. And so a CEO or someone just doesn't act willy-nilly and not accept other ideas. That's why they have these godforsaken meetings all the time, right? But you know what I mean, though. I mean, Kamala Harris acts like her first priority is just going to be to gather everybody around and sit cross-legged on the floor and see about guiding America. But the worst is yet to come on this one.
I pledge to listen to experts.
Oh, no. And most Americans have, I mean, why would you say that after all that happened with COVID and 2020? Why would you say that after we were screwed by the experts? Fauci, Birx, the CDC, the NIH. Experts ruined this country, drove this country into the ground. So why would you, at that point in your big speech, say that you're going to rely on the experts? Haven't we had enough of that? I mean, even liberals, to a certain degree, have to have a short memory on what happened when we relied on experts. It's such a bad idea. And really, in the end, we expect, and again, I don't expect Donald Trump to be an expert on everything, but you have to start with leadership, and you have to start with goals, not start with some kind of negotiation on everything that Kamala Harris is promising, and a reliance on experts. That's like the worst possible thing you can say in this era, that you're going to rely on the experts after all the damage they did to us.
To those who will be impacted by the decisions I make.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what we got at the ellipsis. And of course, everybody in Hollywood and beyond, even Rob Reiner put out a tweet and said, I hope you remember October 29th, the day Kamala Harris was elected the 47th president. These flat earthers are grasping at pretty much anything to give them some ray of hope. And you can hardly blame them. Things are not looking good. This is feeling like a monumental drubbing. And I don't want to be overconfident or anything of that nature, but this feels like, and I think that some of the people on the left are sensing it, that this thing is over, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Walz are absolutely just imploding and deteriorating. Walz, and I'll bring you this later on in the show, is asked about the Nazi thing, and he's doubling down on it. It's pretty unbelievable. The news media, if you can believe this, some people, even in the mainstream media, Tony Duckapill is back at it again. And this time talking about the Nazi and the garbage, and it's pretty incredible because he talked to Walz about it, and I don't know whether Tony Duckapill is just simply planning on not being at the network anymore, but he is very, very much off this reservation that all the left-wing journalists seem to be on. So I'll follow up with that and Rick Pogue straight ahead as well. So I want to make sure you guys know that Schneider's hardware store, True Value Hardware, is just an amazing place. A beautiful old school. You're back in time, but not back in time when it comes to the products, not back in time necessarily where, there wasn't that great of a help for you when you walked into a hardware store. I'm talking about back in time when customer service was king, products and the wide range of tools, everything. And the vibe was small town, hardworking America. That's what you get at Schneider's True Value Hardware. Been there in Old Town St. Peter's for 100 years. It's pretty amazing. It's family owned and operated, and Jerry and Charlie will help you with anything you need, any advice you need. And when you go in there, make sure you bring the kids so they can see what the days were like before Home Depot and some of the other places. Your hardware destination, one nail at a time. Check it out on the web. It's truevalue.com/Schneiders. And thank you, Jerry Schneider, for your support of free, common sense, conservative radio. Rick Pogue, straight ahead.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Good evening, everybody, and happy Wednesday to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report, of course. Thanks for tuning in, and as always on a Wednesday evening, joined by my longtime friend and true patriot, hardest working man in show business, as they say. Of course, also running Johnny's Hideout down there in High Ridge, just 10 minutes from 270 in Gravois. And I got to tell you, he's an amazing dude, and I am so happy to have him on. And as if you didn't think Rick was a greater guy already. So here's a guy, he has this minor surgery this morning. And he goes, I'm going to have a Band-Aid on my face, my nose, and blah, 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 blah. And some people, if they had like more of an ego or something like that or whatever, would say, well, I don't want to be on some place with a Band-Aid on my nose. And Rick's like, no, man, I'm good looking enough that I could have a Band-Aid on my forehead and that'll still be fine, right? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. I don't know about that, but I'm backwoods Hoosier enough to not care. So.
Well, that's
Happy
great.
Wednesday.
Yeah. I mean, it's another example of the no airs when it comes to Rick Pogue. Dude, we were just talking before we started here. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the latest to come out and endorse Kamala Harris. And another example, because I remember back in the day, maybe you were part of that too, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican running for governor, we were all like, yeah, man, he was like Bush and all these guys. And once again, another one of these Republicans betrays us, who we supported before. I feel like such a fool, but I've gotten past blaming myself for all that. We only had the information we had.
Yeah, no, same. I mean, I remember all that, and I was the biggest Arnold fan in the world back when he won the governorship of California. I thought it was awesome. And then he did a whole bunch of things that were like a Democrat would do, and I'm like, maybe he's not a Republican. But obviously with this, in recent years and months and days, and the decision he made today, he's not a Republican. So I don't know what people are thinking. I think people in the Hollywood bubble, and he's definitely in the Hollywood bubble after 35 years of being there, 40 years of being there. I just think they think she's going to win, and I can't rationalize it, because every common sense fiber in my body is telling me Donald Trump's going to win this election, and it's not because I'm supporting him. I can step outside and look at the factors, and I think he's going to get 300 electoral votes, maybe more.
Oh yeah. I agree. And you were one of the first people, and this was last week, noticing this gigantic crowd and the crowds at the polling places. And since then, that's become a thing. I mean, every day I've got an app that actually covers St. Louis County. I haven't seen one for St. Charles County yet, that gives the line length, at every stage of the day, minute by minute. And even still, a week after it started last Tuesday, we are still at 170, 180, 230, you name it, in line at the polling places. And I think that's actually good news.
Yeah, I agree. So our interesting stuff. So number one, which I told you last week, I took 3 cities. I vote, or my city halls in Warrenton. So I went to Warrenton, Missouri. Not a lot of people there, right? It took me 3 days. There were 40, 50 people in line the first 2 days, and I just didn't have time to wait. So I came back the third day and finally got in. Well, this morning, our new general manager at Johnny's Hideout, Eric Fears, went to vote, and he voted in just north of Wentzville, Missouri, and waited 3 hours. Yeah. And he sent a video, which I'll send to you, a video of the line. So the early voting is insane, and especially in Missouri, I don't think they're lining up for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, 3 hours long. I mean, I'll never forget in 2016 when I was on the radio in the morning, and we were getting phone calls from people about what it looked like on the voting day and what it looked like in the lines. And I'll never forget that it was clear that Festus, for instance, they had traffic jams going into the polling places. And at that point, I knew the election was over.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And 2020, the Democrats, for all their evils and fallacies, they did one thing very smart. They got people who didn't even know. I think a lot of them didn't even know what day it was, but they got them busted. They got them to the polls and got them to vote, and they did it early. The early voting in 2020 was owned by the Democrat Party, and even with all the cheating, I think that could have been the difference in the election. This time, I don't think that's the case. What I'm hearing, and you probably know more than me, but what I'm hearing is it's about dead heat in the early voting. If that's true, I think if Trump gets 35, 40% of the early voting, it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how he loses at that point, because that was their big advantage.
Well, and Rick Pogue, we also have this phenomenon all across the country as we're discovering a lot of nefarious dealings with ballot boxes and with balloting and handing out duplicate ballots. In 2020, nobody was catching any of that. And so fast forward to 2024, they're catching a lot of it now. And that's good news. So there might be, obviously, there's still going to be some cheating. But if you go ahead and put that into an equation where they're also finding a lot of cheating before it actually happens or takes any kind of effect on the election, and that's good news for us, because I think the cheating and the mail-in balloting shenanigans and everything else, I think that was the difference in the 2020 election. Absolutely.
No, I agree with you. I have a lot of friends that so down from 2020, they think, they're going to figure out how to steal it no matter what. Well, Laura Trump, as you know, is the co-chair of the RNC now, and she's announced there's over 150,000 poll watchers that they've hired. They know what happened. They saw 2,000 mules. They're friends with Dinesh D'Souza, just, unlike we are. But they know what happened. They know what to look for. And my gut tells me they're really on top of this year. And if there is really egregious cheating is going to be all over the place. But if it's really egregious this year, like I think it's going to have to be for them to have a chance, they'll catch them.
Yeah.
And then what happens? I feel good about it. I really feel good about the election. I mean, yeah, it's easy to go, well, hope I'm right. I just look at all the indicators. I look at, like I said before, I look at, the black vote, black men. Every time Kamala goes out there and talks about brothers as though she's black herself, which she's not, and Obama's out there, talking condescendingly to black men, that's not helping their case. It's pissing them off, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I have several black friends, and they're not happy about it. They're not fans. They know she's a bad candidate. The rank and file Democrat voters, I see a lot of parallels between this election and 2016.
Yes.
2016, what was the dynamic nobody counted on? The Democrat voters didn't like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And it showed. It showed. And he won largely because of that. Fast forward to 2024, the Democrat voters don't like Kamala Harris. They don't like her. She's not likable. She couldn't even win a single vote in Iowa. She was the first one to drop out of the race in 2020. So I see a lot of positive indicators, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, and Rick, it's interesting because even though she's trying to make herself more attractive, every time she opens up her mouth, she gives people another reason not to vote for her. And a case in point was this really bad speech yesterday at the Ellipse in D.C., where she all but admitted that if she gets elected president, she really doesn't really want to win political points or do this kind of thing. She's going to automatically seek common ground, and she's going to rely on experts. Now, at that point, even if you're a liberal, you're thinking, well, why am I going to hire somebody who basically is going to automatically turn into a middle manager as opposed to a president of the United States? And what's crazy is she doesn't realize how bad that sounds to most people, especially post-COVID, when the experts ruined our country. So I don't know what she's thinking here.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And that just affirms that people don't think she's a good candidate. They know she's a bad candidate. The people that put her in place, Schumer and Pelosi and Obama, the ones that basically, they threatened Joe Biden, and he's pissed about that. But those people know she's a bad candidate. They just want to know if they can pull the wool over the American people's eyes one more time. And I don't think it's going to work a second time. I really don't. And when she's not saying something stupid, she's got good old Creepy Joe to say something stupid like about Puerto Rican, about Trump supporters being garbage.
Yeah.
Did you hear that today?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's funny is that those were two really bad things that happened yesterday. The garbage comment, and then Kamala Harris all but admitting that she's not going to try to be a leader when she becomes president. Instead, she's going to be a person who sits cross-legged on the floor with everybody. It's crazy. By the way, I noticed that you were wearing your You Missed shirt. This is what it looks like, people.
Yes.
It's a fantastic shirt, fantastic design. And where can we get these? You guys still have these available?
We do, and if we run out, we'll make more. But my marketing company, Vision Marketing and Promo, there on Elm Street in St. Charles, makes those shirts. The day after that first assassination attempt, I called them up and I said, I want shirts made, and they had those shirts cranked out in 5 days.
Yeah,
5 or 6 days. So yeah, and so if you want to call Vision Marketing and Promo and order one of these shirts, I think they're like $20. They're not expensive. It's 636-400-1500. And that's, again, Vision Marketing and Promo there in St. Charles on Elm Street. Or you can go to the Facebook page as well, which is Vision STL.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah. But yeah, they're available and they're great.
Yeah. So I know that that's what you do every day. You're everywhere, buddy. I don't know how you do it, but, and you're not always you are not always in like, God's country all the time. So when you wear a shirt like that, do you ever get any kind of responses or anybody ask you about it? I'm talking about like from maybe the liberal side or what have you.
No, I really don't. I think I get a lot of scowls from liberal women, which you can tell they're liberals, Karens, Karen type.
Yeah.
Most men don't say anything because I'm usually a lot bigger than they are, so they can't muster the courage to tell me they don't like my shirt.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I get a lot of thumbs up and people want to know where I got this shirt and how awesome it is.
Yeah.
So, no, I get a lot of positive response out of it.
It is amazing. And I remember this, too, because I have a lot of my 1776 Forever Free gear and also stuff from Grunt Style that has 1776 on it. Never forget being in an airport. I can't remember what town it was in. I was wearing my 1776 thing, and some dude came up to me and said, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "What in the hell do you think it means?" Like, what is he? I mean, he's one of those guys, I guess, who believes that 1776 is like code for racism or revolution or what have you. It's like, dude, it's 1776. You remember that year as being a great year?
No, I agree.
Yeah. Well, and clearly,
I agree with you.
Yeah, and clearly not talked about in school apparently for this dumbass. Whatever.
Well, sorry, they're being taught that America is the great Satan. I mean, that's what public schools are teaching, and unfortunately, we're about 2 generations behind with kids being taught that Columbus was a pirate and an evil person and a raider, and all these horrible things about our amazing the foundation of our amazing country. Make America Great Again is now a Nazi slogan. Did you know that?
Yeah, unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah. And a number of people gathering in one place who all want to make America great again is actually a Nazi rally. So it's unbelievable. What's funny is I think a lot of this whole Nazi thing, a lot of it's projection because they all know that they're really the brown shirts in this American game here. They're the ones who all march to the same groupthink and everything else. They're the ones who propagandize and lie and promote hate and division. It's not us. It's crazy. And they just it's clear, you talk to any psychologist, it's what they call projection. Exactly what it is.
Yeah. And they get away with it, Jamie, because the national media supports it. Yeah. And that's the important component here. Obviously, it's a lie, and it's everything they say they do themselves. But the problem is the media supports it and promulgates it and puts it forth. And too many people believe they see on TV. Yeah. And that's just the plain truth.
Right
and
on.
They know this, and they use it to their advantage.
All right, Rick Pogue, what's happening at Johnny's Hideout this weekend? Lots of activity?
Yeah, we aren't really doing anything for special for Halloween. We had our Halloween party last Saturday.
Yeah.
But we'll have a band on Friday, a band on Saturday. I can't think of the names of the band.
But, yeah.
If you're ever going to come to Johnny's Hideout, which you all should and see it and experience it because it is really awesome, and I'm not just saying that because I own it. It's actually true. I make sure of that. Quality goes into everything I do. But it's an experience that people should see for themselves. And and now we have the new party bus, as you know, and the
Yeah.
party bus will be, we'll have a calendar up on there's a party bus page. We'll have a calendar up on it. There'll be events to the Blues games downtown, in the spring, the Cardinals games. So we just continue to add to the experience of Johnny's Hideout.
Yeah, I got to do that party bus, man. I was going to do it last week or a couple weeks ago. I had to work at the bar, the brewery, but man, that's amazing. If you want to check out too what's coming up music-wise, everything else, just to get a good lay of the land, the Johnny's Hideout has a Facebook page, Johnny's Hideout STL, and then also jhideout.com is where you can get some other great information about what's happening there. All right, brother. Well, always an honor to have you on the show. I hope you have a great week. I know you'll be out of town next week, but we really appreciate you sharing your insights, Rick Pogue.
Hey, as always, the honor is mine, my friend. God bless you. Love you to death.
All right, brother. God bless you and love you too, man. Appreciate you so much. All right. Coming up, as I promised, this really amazing transformation of this dude, Tony Duckapill, on CBS. And, I remember he had his ears pinned back publicly and by his own organization when he challenged this clearly anti-Semite dude who just claimed he was doing, I'm just doing a little book about, what it's like to be a Palestinian. And it actually turns out to be just totally anti-Israel. Called him out on it. They had a big meeting at CBS. He had to go through some kind of training, whatever. But clearly, whatever happened didn't cause any more fear. And I'll have that for you on the other side of this, as he confronts Tim Walz in a grand way on the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Meet me in outer space. We could spend the night, watch the earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Allman Report. This beautiful Wednesday evening, Jamie Allman here with you, News Talk STL 101.9, 94.1. And, well, the latest person to endorse Donald Trump is the astronaut Buzz Aldrin. He's a cool dude, and so that's the latest endorsement of President Trump. You heard, obviously, yesterday, and I opened the show with it, the closing argument from Kamala Harris where she pledged to rely on the experts and basically just be a middle manager who seeks the opinions of everybody and then comes to some conclusion but doesn't really want to win any points, doesn't want to win on her own philosophy, whatever. She's going to have one big group running the country, which is idiotic, but I'm glad she said it. So when they're not calling you garbage or Nazis, even when they try to put forth some kind of policy initiative or closing argument that makes them worse something, they screw that up even. So they can't win on any level, whether it be just gratuitously calling people names and wiping people out or trying to articulate some kind of policy. It doesn't work. President Trump has put together a series of ads. These are great videos. And by the way, I'm going to do this now because I think, and I'll get to the Tony Duckable thing on the other side at the top of the second hour because I want to have a little more time with it. So the Trump campaign is really doing great work. I don't know whether you caught on to this already. I'm sure you have. I've done plenty of reporting on it, and the campaign is just really blowing on all cylinders. They're not missing a beat. They're so much better than they even were in 2016, certainly 2020. And so whoever he has working for him and getting this stuff together is really pretty incredible. So Tulsi Gabbard, she's featured in one of the videos. It's just amazing. Tulsi Gabbard. Very highly produced, beautiful videos.
I joined the Democratic Party over 20 years ago. I was 21 years old in Hawaii, and at that time, it welcomed people from all different backgrounds, different views, celebrated free speech, and actually defended those whose speech was being attacked, even if they disagreed with their views. It was a party that stood up for the little guy and represented our values of freedom and liberty in America. I left the Democrat Party because now it stands for the exact opposite of all of those things.
Free speech is not an absolute.
Social media sites, they are speaking to millions of people without oversight or regulation, and that has to stop.
I never would have imagined as an American and as a soldier that we would live in a country in my lifetime where we would feel like we have to self-censor what we say, that we couldn't criticize our own government for fear of them labeling us as a domestic terrorist. We are closer to the brink of World War III and nuclear war today than we ever have been before, directly because of the Harris-Biden administration's foreign policy. Too many Americans are struggling just to afford the basic necessities of life. No matter how many times we've heard Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over these last 4 years tout and celebrate how Bidenomics has been great for America,
America's economy is strong.
Polls consistently show that a majority of the American people disapprove of the president's handling of the economy.
Guess what? It's working.
Over half of Americans earning a six-figure salary report that they're actually living paycheck to paycheck. Bidenomics is working. It is actually working.
The number of homeless people on the streets and in shelters across the U.S. increased significantly this year.
Bidenomics is working.
It's almost as though they're speaking from an ivory tower, saying how great they are and patting themselves on the back, while people are struggling for crumbs on the streets.
this is only halfway done, and you can see it on X, and the Trump War Room is releasing these videos. And what's great about this one, and then I'm going to play you the RFK Jr. one too. And again, I don't mean to be overconfident here, and I truly believe this, that the likes of Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., some of these other people who are speaking out in support of President Trump is something that we have not seen before. Even in 2016, we didn't see it. President Trump had to single-handedly and muscularly wrest that sure thing away from Hillary Clinton. In 2020 and in 2016, he was abandoned by the Republicans. In 2020, he was absolutely abandoned by Republicans. And in 2024, he has been abandoned by many Republican leaders, abandoned by the Bush family, the Cheneys, all these other clowns who used to work for him, all these people in the National Review salon Republican reaches. They've abandoned him. But guess what? It doesn't matter. They think they're having an impact, but the people who are counterbalancing their abandonment are people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and others. So in the end, when this is all over and President Trump wins, who are you going to be giving your trust? Mitch McConnell starving out Ted Cruz's campaign in Texas. In the end, who is it you're going to trust? And you know what? In all likelihood, it's not going to be your standard issue Republican in the standard issue Republican Party. It's going to be the reinvigoration of the Republican Party in the vision of Donald Trump and these other people. And so, once and for all, like I say, and I've said this a lot, but once and for all, we're just going to have to cast these people out and forget about them and forget about trying to see if they're going to help us, because they're not. G.W. Bush is a terrible person, and I regret my support for him. And I will never consider him to be a decent human being, decent person. I feel like a total fool. Cheney's the same way, because they were not there for me and my country when we needed them. And I think of all the Americans who were there for them when they needed them, and some of them are dead because they fought in wars that these guys got us into. So the choice is really clear. When the sun rises on November 6th, we're in a totally new frontier. We're in a totally new world if President Trump wins, which I think he will. And we've got to take advantage of it and appreciate and embrace this newly formed Republican Party, this newly formed coalition of common sense conservatives, and continue the revolution.
If you want to avoid nuclear war, I strongly urge you to vote for Donald Trump. In fact, I would go so far as to say that a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for nuclear war. Here are some of my reasons for saying that. Former Vice President Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala, and she said she was honored to have his approval. Dick Cheney was the driving force behind a group called the Neocons, which started the Iraq War, in which the U.S. launched an unprovoked preemptive attack, the first in its history, in order to prevent Saddam Hussein from threatening the world with weapons of mass destruction. As history now shows, there were no weapons of mass destruction. It was all a neocon lie. Most estimates are that over 1 million Iraqis died, while the USA and Allied forces suffered over 4,800 deaths and over 32,000 wounded. We killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein ever did. This fraction of our military and intelligence establishment that we call the neocons, led by Dick Cheney, faked the evidence of weapons of mass destruction because they wanted a war. In 1961, President Eisenhower warned the American people of the dangers of the emerging military-industrial complex.
Yeah, I've played that for you before. This is chilling. And the fact of the matter is, as we saw even with Ukraine, this involvement, instead of actually involving us in a war, we're just simply draining our treasury for it. But they'll find a way to get back into a worldwide conflict. Kamala Harris will. I totally agree with RFK Jr. President Trump is a president of peace. He's a leader of peace. And RFK Jr. is not overstating what's at stake in this election, something that you and I haven't talked a lot about much because we're talking about the economy and other things. But this is true. And so, again, President Trump's closing argument involving all of these great people around him is absolutely hitting on all cylinders and is absolutely stellar. And it looks like some people in the news media are starting to figure that out. I'll have a great example for you. On the other side of this is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report. Yes, you guys been out there lately, people? I have this thing called Sky Guide, and it really is cool. And I always take my Sky Guide outside when it gets dark and I can see in the sky, and it gives you a mapping, like, for instance, of all the constellations. Like, I when I look at the Sky Guide, I can see it there. I can see Orion, and I can see Jupiter is labeled, and Mars, and all these other constellations and star groupings and things like that. We've had really a run, although I think tomorrow that changes, over the past 2 weeks of just gorgeous, amazing weather. And looking out at the sky and seeing all the stars, it just is absolutely incredible. So I love that so much. It's called, let me see what my thing is called. It's called Sky Guide. It's an app. It's free, and you can get it. I don't have any financial interest. I'm just telling you, it's a cool thing. Some of these things are very expensive and very complicated, and you don't really need them. All right, so CBS, Tony Duckapill, as you know, has already been in hot water one time because he confronted this clear anti-Semite and Hamas sympathizer who was purporting to do this book about, well, I just wanted to tell the stories of people of Gaza and what they're going through. And it turned out to be totally an anti-Israel hunk of garbage. And Tony Duckapill kind of called him out on it. And he said, if I didn't know any better, I could find this in the backpack of a extremist, a terrorist. He didn't say terrorist, but everybody knew what he meant. And that got him into a lot of trouble. So CBS had this meeting. They said it didn't uphold the standards of journalism, and Tony Duckapill was forced to kind of do some remedial, I don't know, some kind of meeting that he had to have with people. And they have a whole team, apparently, of people who are there to monitor reporters for what they're saying and everything else. And it's mostly DEI type of stuff. But anyway, he does this interview this morning with Tim Walz, and wow, I mean,
I want to put it into a larger context of your recent comment comparing the Sunday Trump rally to a Nazi rally. And I would also throw in there Obama's bitter clingers, guns and religion comment from a while back, the deplorable line from Hillary Clinton's campaign, and the way that Democrats are seen by some voters as disrespecting them. And I have to ask, does that undercut this closing message of unity from your campaign?
No, certainly not.
Well, certainly not, no. Well, I'm going to let him answer the question more fully, because I want you to hear the entire context of it. And Tony Duckapill, I'm thinking, man, this is CBS.
What's your reaction to the president's comments? But I want to put it into a larger context of your recent comment comparing the Sunday Trump rally to a Nazi rally. And I would also throw in there Obama's bitter clingers, guns and religion comment from a while back, the deplorable line from Hillary Clinton's campaign, and the way that Democrats are seen by some voters as disrespecting them. And I have to ask, does that undercut this closing message of unity from your campaign?
No, certainly not. And for Tony, for me, I've represented rural areas. I've represented Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Same thing with the vice president. Look, you saw a presidential speech last night at the Ellipse that is the best of America, one that's talking about unifying us, one that's talking about bringing folks to the table, one that the American tradition of disagreeing and debating.
By the way, just as another point of reference here, Kamala Harris is talking about not bringing folks to the table. She's talking about bringing other people to the table who are going to tell her what to do, which isn't a good thing.
But still doing it in a respectful manner. And I think there's the frustration we've seen since January 6th, the frustration with Donald Trump's rhetoric of division. It does fire passions. And I think Vice President...
I already told you, of course, yesterday, people still harp on January 6th, forgetting January 20th of 2017. I, in fact, had a discussion with somebody yesterday after all this and doing it on the show, and they didn't even know about it. That's how little it got any kind of real coverage. Anyway, we continue.
And Biden was very clear that he's speaking about the rhetoric we heard at that, so it doesn't undermine it. People are hungry to come back together. They're hungry to find a unifying message. They're hungry for us to find solutions, whether it's prices or whether it's reproductive care. They want to see solutions.
But
Governor Nate Burleson here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, so Tony Duckybill got the hook. So that's the problem with the setup of this morning show, is that Tony Duckybill doesn't get any chance to follow up in any way, shape, or form. So suddenly this other dude, Nate Burleson, takes over, and he's going to just suck up.
There has been some reporting that President Biden has been sidelined during this campaign. One, is there any truth?
So basically what happened is, because of the structure of that morning show, what they wound up doing is they wound up just kind of like letting Tim Walz not answer the question, which he didn't do. And obviously this must be the outgrowth of the Tony Duckybill retraining, because in the end, he's not asking follow-up questions. So that must be what the way they change things. All right, Tony, you can ask a tough question. You can ask a hard question, but we're not going to let you do the follow-up. We're not going to let you engage, which is what they let him do when he was interviewing this Hamas sympathizer, because he kept on following up. You could see that that's no longer something that they want Tony Duckybill to do, and they managed at that point to change the whole tenor of a Tony Duckybill interview. But at least he did get the question out, which is progress. But in the end, we were also able to see what exactly CBS changed since the last time Tony Duckybill asked a question. Here's another one. This is a guy, this is just a reporter who did ask follow-up questions on the Nazi reference and beyond, and that's how this one went.
You said over the weekend, referring to it, there's a direct parallel to a big rally that happened in the mid-1930s at Madison Square Garden.
Well, look,
you were comparing that rally to a Nazi rally?
Look, I'm comparing it to the hate that came out of this, and I think they confirmed that.
You stand by that comparison, though, to a Nazi rally?
Look, the rally, you saw it for yourself. I'll let the American public make the decision of what they saw.
What about you, though?
So I know what I saw, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm still a big fan of calling it a Nazi party, a Nazi rally. I'm fine with all that, and of course, never mind, of course, that these people are acting and are still acting like there are only two events ever at Madison Square Garden. Of course, I regaled you with all the listing of events: a Nazi rally and a Trump rally. Those two things are the only thing that's ever happened in history at Madison Square Garden. Unbelievable. The news media locally can be up to some shenanigans, too. So here's a screenshot that my buddy Jimmy Hoff at the Gateway Pundit has put up from WNEP, Scranton, Pennsylvania's news leader. So they did this test result like they were doing their little under the screen, under the picture, voting tabulations. And so I guess they were testing the system. And it sat up there for a long time. This was during obviously a open axle car race that they were airing that showed Harris beating Trump 52 to 47% in Pennsylvania with 100 precincts reporting. That's what they saw on their screen. Now, obviously, it's an ABC News station, but it's not acceptable for these stations to be playing around with this kind of stuff. And obviously, I don't think people in Scranton are that stupid that they're going to just think that the election is over. But the fact of the matter is that happened. And so you never know. Wishful thinking more than anything else, because somebody had to make up that graphic and it wasn't an organic graphic. It was somebody who just made it up and threw it up there. So that's what you get. All right. I want to let you know also what you get. It's Poly time. Yeah. When my guy, Carvin Hughes, he's a great guy, U.S. Marine. He is a person who has reinvented the whole idea of precision concrete leveling and restoration services. And so you've heard of mudjacking. You've heard about what happens when you have a driveway or you have a patio or something that kind of is starting to dip a little bit or do whatever. And so what would happen is you'd bring in the mudjackers and they would go ahead and level the concrete. Well, there's a brand new system and it's called Poly Time. It's polyjacking, and it's polytime.com is the website where you can find out more about it. And it's actually a long-lasting solution. It's a better, long-lasting solution to mudjacking. So no job too big or too small for Carvin and the team. I want you to go ahead, give them a call, 636-487-3282, or visit itspolytime.com. It's polytime.com. Thank you, Polytime, for supporting free, common-sense, conservative radio.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday to all of you and yours. Thank you for listening and watching the Allman Report here on NewsTalkSTL. Jamie Allman, really happy to be with you. And, man, I got to tell you, I'm seeing some smatterings of light when it comes to the way some reporters are covering things. And as you all know, I made my career as a television news investigative reporter. I know a little bit about all this and anchoring and all that kind of stuff. And so I tend to focus a little more on this than some other people might, media criticism. But you guys might not have heard this story that happened in Colorado and this nefarious Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold. So what happened is there was a leak of these BIOS passwords that were linked to voting machines in Colorado. The leak reportedly exposed sensitive data for voting system components across nearly all Colorado counties. The Colorado GOP put out an affidavit claiming that Griswold's office inadvertently published a file containing more than 600 passwords on the Secretary of State's official website, leaving the information exposed to public access from August until now, until October. And so Jenna Griswold is being interviewed by this guy, Kyle Clark, on 9 News in Colorado. And he's definitely on to something here. He's not letting her off the hook.
Jenna Griswold, thank you for your time today. So your office is acknowledging that you inadvertently leaked voting system passwords by putting them on your website. Colorado Republican Party says that this was more than 600 BIOS passwords for voting systems in all but one Colorado county. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate.
How many passwords and for which counties?
So a spreadsheet located on the department website improperly had a hidden tab with partial passwords. So I think that is really important. This is not the full password to access voting equipment. At this point, we had started an investigation and actually have people in the field that have been working on this issue.
When you say partial passwords, do you mean that it had one of the 2 passwords required to get into the system, or it did not even have one full password?
It had one of 2, and not for all voting components, for some voting components in the state.
How many counties?
So then she starts to push this idea that they're just partial passwords. And it was a great question this guy asked. So he said, well, what does partial password mean? Like, does it mean that half a word? Or does it mean just one of 2 passwords need to get in? And she had to admit it was actually one of 2, which is a significant piece of progress if you are hacking into a system or trying to get into a system. Having one of 2 full passwords is not a bad start.
At this point, Kyle, we have staff in the field looking at the situation, but we will disclose after they're out of the field. To be very clear, we do not see this as a full security threat to the state. This is not a security threat. There are 2 passwords to get into any voting component along with physical access. We have layers of security, and out of just an abundance of caution, have staff in the field changing passwords, looking at access logs, and looking at the entire situation and continuing our investigation.
Is it accurate that the passwords were removed from the public portion of your website last Thursday?
Yes.
How long were they up?
They were up for several months without it being realized. As soon as my office, civil servants, became aware that they were up, we started to take action. The first step, of course, was removing those passwords. I want to be clear, not all of those passwords were active current passwords. We then started working.
I mean, just by itself, as she's starting to kind of go through all this kind of stuff, you're still thinking, oh my goodness, this is 2024. This is a consequential election. And we're seeing this kind of dumbassery at the Secretary of State level there in Colorado. I mean, this is totally and completely unacceptable. Like, of all times, especially after 2020 and all of the questions about election integrity and everything else, you're really now having to explain why passwords are up on a public website to get into voting machines? Whether or not they're partial or this, it still is totally unforgivable that it would have gotten to this point.
CISA, which is the federal agency in charge of critical infrastructure, including election infrastructure, and began our investigation.
Is it accurate that you did not notify the county clerks of this breach and they found out when the Colorado Republican Party announced it today?
What is accurate is that we had began an investigation and we're working with the appropriate federal partners.
Had you announced it to the county clerks?
No, we had not. We were.
Really? Great questioning, by the way. So this breach happened. It was up there, as she points out, for several months, although it was August to October, but maybe it was longer than that. I don't know. And she didn't notify any of the county clerks, hey, by the way, our passwords were leaked. You guys need to take extra vigilance when it comes to making sure everything is going okay with these voting machines. Because, they started voting early, too. So it just so happens that it was done in August, which is the primary time, too. But she didn't notify any of the county clerks. It took the GOP, the Republican Party, to notify the county clerks. The Secretary of State didn't do that.
Doing an investigation and in the field actually today before it was announced by the Republican Party.
You held a press conference last Thursday to discuss an unrelated voter fraud scheme in Mesa County. Were you aware at that time that your office had leaked the passwords?
Well, to be very clear, when you say passwords, there are two sets of passwords held by two.
So in other words, she held a news conference, probably as kind of like, hey, look, the tennis ball over there in that corner, to announce something nefarious in Mesa, Colorado. And he, as he said, did you know about this when you had that news conference? And she, of course, did, but she's not answering it, so he'll probably ask her again. I don't know. And so she knew about this, but didn't want to tell anybody.
Parties in different locations to access voting equipment. So we do not think that this poses an immediate security threat to Colorado's elections. And at the time of the press conference, we were not aware.
So
I was not aware.
Understood. You do frequent media interviews warning of the insider threats to elections. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security defines an insider threat as somebody who uses authorized access wittingly or unwittingly to do harm. Did the actions of your office pose an insider threat to elections?
No.
And why do you say that?
For several reasons. First off, I do want to underline.
You get the point. I mean, this is a disaster. This can't make people feel good about what's going on. We're seeing so many examples of this, and just a little piecemeal time. So we have in Michigan, the election integrity data has shown that there are 208,075 ballots cast by 82,674 voters. You do the math there, that's an excess of 125,428 votes cast. So something is not right even in Michigan. And the Trump campaign has, in fact, won big in this lawsuit to extend early voting in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That's after GOP voters were turned away. But we're still seeing these little things happening in these little areas, Michigan, Colorado, to some degree Arizona, where even though they're catching them, some of it's too late. And what do you do in Michigan when you have these excess ballots? 1,075 ballots cast by 82,674 voters. So basically, it's almost 2 for every 1 vote. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. So not making people feel good. We're going to have to swamp the polls to make this happen, but it's not pleasant to look at. All right, ladies and gentlemen, few things going on that I want to kind of do a lightning round on for you on the other side of this. But guess what the Europeans are doing? The Europeans and the European Union that is slobbered all over by the left and Democrats and beyond. You'll be astonished at what they're doing in dealing with China. I'll bring it up to you on the other side of this. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday to all of you and yours. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. I was just trying to think of like a good thing to make fun of the garbage person. You know what would be great is if you wanted to have a Halloween costume and you just cut the bottom of a trash can out and you figure out a way to wear it around your shoulders, and then you have you have a hat as a garbage lid, like the lid of a garbage can. And you can play that dude from Sesame Street, too. What's his name?
Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch. I don't know. We can all. There's something we could do with this to have fun with it, especially post-election, especially if Trump wins, which obviously, as I said, I think he will. We have to do something to wear the garbage person badge with honor. So we got to figure something out. I'll leave that up to you guys because you're always creative. And I'll talk to Rick Pogue about making a T-shirt, something that will be, garbage man or garbage woman or garbage person, what have you. I think it'd be great. All right, this is funny. This guy is hanging outside of some Trump protest, and this guy's got like some serious Trump derangement syndrome. He's interviewed. He's holding a placard up of Trump in a black and white prison jail garb, holding the jail cell things, and this is what he had to say when he was asked about his biggest obstacle
in life right now. My biggest obstacle in life? Trump. Trump, absolutely. So do you wake up and think about him? Yes, constantly, every day. Do you go to sleep and think about him? Yes, every day. Are you in love with him? I hate his guts.
Do you think about him every day you wake up? Yeah, and so this guy's obsessed with Donald Trump. It's crazy. All right, this too. So the white guys for Kamala, oh my Lord. So Billy Eichner and Will Ferrell and Will Ferrell, people. I mean, it's not that I dislike him now, but I always thought of Will Ferrell as being kind of like, he's a, kind of one of those guys that doesn't talk a lot about politics. And you got to imagine that, he's just kind of, I don't know, he was one of those guys that just like Jack Nicholson, people like that who stay out of things. Like that's another thing that's cool about Jack Nicholson is like you don't hear him running around babbling about all this nonsense and politics or anything for that matter. It's just kind of stay cool, I think Al Pacino's the same way. I know those guys from the background with the exception of What's His Nuts. But anyway, I never really fancied Will Ferrell as being a guy who was going to go out and kind of ruin the whole vibe by doing one of these videos where they're trying to get people on the street to shout, "I support Kamala."
With the one and only Will Ferrell, and we are out here today to represent a very important voting demographic, loud white men for Kamala Harris. So you ready, Will? Ah! Miss, for $1, would you have sex with a Trump voter?
Absolutely not.
Thank you very much. For another $1, what's your favorite Will Ferrell movie?
Elf.
Elf, obviously.
Talladega Nights is a big one because I worked in racing.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
I don't have time for this whole biography. Sir, for $1, which would you rather see a sequel to, Elf or Trump?
Elf.
Yes, there you go!
There you go.
Have you voted yet?
No.
Okay, who are you going to vote for?
Harris.
Yes, yes, you can vote early.
I just registered. I'm coming right now.
Oh, amazing! Perfect. Oh, my God, thank you!
Oh, my goodness. This is unbelievable. This is ridiculous. And I haven't seen the people who they actually wound up talking to who are supporting Trump because I think those people were edited out,
Thank you!
Oh, thank you. That's too much. That's too much.
No,
and by the way, what is this with the guys? Like, you guys out there and you ladies out there even, I mean, what is it with the guys? It's like, why are you doing that? And is that supposed to be funny, or are you trying to kind of like come across as, well, I'm not taking myself too seriously, so I'm going to do this? I don't even know who the hell Billy Eichner is. Do you know who Billy Eichner is, Ethan?
I don't think I've heard of him at all.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's so frustrating sometimes because these names pop up, but it's Billy Eichner. I'm like, I have no idea who that is. It was like that one dude, Kill Tony, at the the rally.
There are too many. There's just too many comedians now. Too many funny people.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I found one that I really like. He's a clean comedian, and it's Nate Bargatze. Now, some people call him Bargatze, but he said it's Nate Getzy. But he's pretty funny. I see him. He comes on my feed all the time. All right.
That's exactly right. Miss, we are loud white men for Kamala.
Good for you. I am too. Good for you guys.
This is like loud gay men for Kamala, because it's like, what is this? What is this? We're loud white men for Kamala. It's like, gay guys don't even act like that. What's wrong with you? I mean, and I feel bad, and that's another thing I've said before, because it's kind of like, gay men, like a lot of gay women, just want to be left alone, and they always have to have like these guys who are like famous gay people who stereotype them and over dramatize them and make them give them all the kinds of stereotypes that they don't want. It's like, most gay men are like, they don't do that. But whatever.
Awesome.
That's right.
Go Kamala.
Go Kamala.
Love her.
That's right. Can I ask you a question?
I mean, and obviously this is like fake enthusiasm, because you guys love Trump, right? But you'd never be out on the street going, I love Trump. Don't you love Trump? We love Trump. Don't you love Trump? Trump. You don't really do that, right? Do you? No. I mean, so what is this? This is like one of those children's shows, everybody's got to be all hopped up and all that. It's kind of like, seems like they're trying to compensate for the darkness that is this campaign that they're seeing, I think.
From Flint. From
Flint.
What was that?
Flint, Michigan.
Flint, Michigan. Yes. Are you voting for Kamala?
Yes.
Yes. Tell everyone in Michigan.
Flint. I love the sheriff from Genesee County.
Okay.
Have you seen Semi-Pro? One of my movies?
Oh,
yes.
great.
Never
We're talking
mind.
about your movies now. No one saw Semi-Pro. Sir, we're loud white men for Kamala. Join the call.
Join the call.
Hell yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, who are you voting for?
Kamala Harris.
Yes, exactly. Have you voted yet?
Mail-in ballot. All right.
I'm wondering, like, what would you do if somebody came up? I would say I'm voting for Trump, obviously. But I'm trying to figure out, like, what this is. Like, what exactly these guys are trying to do. And why would you? What is it about the loud white men for Kamala thing? What's about the loud part? Why is that? And why are they running up to it? And Will Ferrell is beclowning himself in this thing for some unknown reason. I just don't even know why he would do this.
Mail-in ballot, bitch! Sir, Will Ferrell will kick your ass if you don't vote.
Uh-oh. I'm voting.
Okay.
Yes. I'm voting Saturday. I'm doing early voting. Andy, there's Will Ferrell and I forgot.
Billy! Miss, for $1, how many undecided white women have been able to commit to seeing Wicked months in advance?
I don't know.
Probably a lot.
Her and me.
Oh, yes.
We've committed.
You're committed? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then you're
I feel like the people they're interviewing are actors. I feel like none of this seems very organic to me, but
undecided.
I don't know.
Okay, no, we're going. We're going. We're going to see Wicked.
No, I mean about the vote for president.
Oh, I thought you said Wicked.
Okay. Have you guys had enough of this? Yeah, I know. Okay, you have. Okay, good. I'm just wondering, because I'm not. This is. You have to imagine this is only 3 minutes and 19 seconds long, and how many of you already feel like it's been an hour? Just so you know. So I can't even do another minute of this nonsense without you guys just punching out on me. This is the story I think that is very, very important that I need to convey to you, because all the talk about tariffs, right? And President Trump wanting to bring back tariffs on Chinese goods, tariffs and things like that. Tariffs are a thing I support. They are a way to even the playing field. They are effective, and Ronald Reagan proved that. Maybe he kind of went overboard on some of the tariffs. I mean, he taxed everything from the rice rocket motorcycles to clothing pins, So he was pretty across the board a tariff guy. Tariffs work. They are completely and totally constitutional. They are a tool in the Constitution, because that the United States government, one of the enumerated powers is the regulation of commerce. And don't let anybody tell you that tariffs are not conservative. They are. They're constitutional, and they are backed by the enumerated powers of the government, being one to regulate commerce. That's how that works. So Trump has talked about getting tougher on China, trying to keep China from flooding the markets of America with cheap crap and undermining the manufacturing base here. Would we rather have just a stronger, more competitive manufacturing base? Yes. How do you get to the point where you actually can get to that point where you have a strong manufacturing base and companies that want to stay in this country instead of going overseas? You help them with not only a prosperous country, but you also do it through tariffs. It's a tool. It's a mechanism. It's part of the things in a toolbox that make up the whole when it comes to the economy. And so you're getting all these people who are crapping all over Trump for talking about tariffs, instituting tariffs, and doing all this kind of stuff. And saying they're just going to punish America, do all this kind of stuff, and do all this kind of stuff. Well, wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't you imagine, huh? And these same people all, love the EU, want us to copy them, the European Union, want us to do everything they're doing when it comes to green energy and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Because they've been so steeped in the green energy movement, guess what they're doing now? Europe has announced new tariffs on Chinese cars. So the European Union Commission has put in place new tariffs designed to punish China for heavily subsidizing its EV industry. So what they did was the EU actually conducted an investigation into Chinese subsidies of electric cars. The European Union top guy said this highlights Europe's growing industrial and geopolitical competition with China. So you have to imagine that these people at the European Union, of all places, would like to see a Trump presidency because he's going to get tougher on China as it relates to tariffs. So this is coming from the president of the European Commission, and this was taking place in Strasbourg, France. Listen to the words coming out of her mouth. I'm going to quote them because they're in French. Europe is open for competition, not for a race to the bottom. We must defend ourselves against unfair practices. Who does that sound like? Donald Trump. Now, we are also seeing, and I want to digress here just for a second, we're also seeing a common sense revolution sweeping the world right now. I've talked to Jim Carafano about this. We see Argentina fast becoming more of a conservative country. We've seen what happened with Italy. We've seen what's going on in Hungary as well. Even Canada is showing some signs of it. The European Union sees the electric car sector as a crucial industry for the clean economy with huge potential for Europe. Now, you can quibble with whether or not their whole thing with electric cars is a good thing or a bad thing. We obviously, in the United States of America, are not on the path to 100% electric car ownership. It'll never happen. And plus, electric cars don't reduce carbon emissions by any meaningful percentage. And their batteries explode in water, and they're just not great cars. You can't travel with them, whatever. In Europe, it's a different story. They have, a lot of them do use their cars, but a lot of it is more of an urban area. Europeans don't necessarily take road trips like Americans do all the time. And if they do, they take the TVJ or they take the train or they fly or do whatever. Europeans don't generally pack up the EV and go cross country. That's not what they do. But here we do that. But over there, the electric car has obviously been more accepted. It's more practically applied to just modern living in Europe. And so it's not that big of a deal. You don't have a lot of people in Europe fighting the electric car movement like you do here, which is a good thing because we can't afford what we're doing and we can't put the gasoline-powered cars out of business. You know, they just don't have that problem necessarily. So they're big into the electric cars. And this is, and you know, you could say, well, that's what you get for building your economy around electric cars is the Chinese are going to come in. Yeah, you can argue with that, but the reality is we're talking more practically about tariffs and about the European Union fighting back just like Donald Trump wants to do. It's pretty significant. So global markets, according to this woman who's the president of the EU Commission, global markets are flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars. And they keep the prices of these electric cars artificially low because China state subsidizes the electric car industry. And so it's not giving Europe, in this sense, any kind of real competitive advantage, and it's hurting them. So the tariffs that the EU announced range from 17% to as high as 45%. There was some disagreement about whether or not they really are a good idea. It's the kind of arguments that we have here. And the Germans are a little bit worried about this because the German automakers have been selling cars in China, and China is the world's largest car market. So they're worried now that, for instance, China is going to crack down on them with their own tariffs. Volkswagen, in particular, said it might have to close factories for the first time in history in Germany and lay off tens of thousands of workers if in fact you have the competition from China, where they've already laid off workers because of that. And so Volkswagen's already being punished by the subversive activities of China, and the people have already been laid off there. And so how much more damage can tariffs do in this case? Will China, put tariffs on your German cars in China? Yeah, maybe. But will you be able to sell more Volkswagen-made EVs and others in Germany because you don't have the undermining competition of the Chinese cheap EV cars? So it's a trade-off, and automobile manufacturing in Germany is the most important industry in Germany. It's contributed like $610 billion to the German economy. So I could see how they would be a problem. But the reality is you're already closing plants and losing jobs because of the Chinese competition. So how much more damage can they do? And how much will you be able to get a payoff by isolating the market a little bit more and giving the German EVs a little more of a leg up against the Chinese EVs? So the bottom line is, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on the European car market. What I'm saying, though, is you're seeing a sea change of attitude on a number of different levels, economically, as it relates to illegal immigration, all this kind of stuff, kind of sweeping across the world. There seems to be a common sense revolution going all across the world. And Trump, even though he's portrayed as being errant and a threat to democracy, everything else, tell that to the EU, because they think he's got some good ideas, because they're adopting them when it relates to tariffs and beyond. And so the bottom line is, if we hand the reins of this government over to the Democrats and Kamala Harris, they will destroy this country, its economy. They will destroy it from within with the open borders. They're going to get us into world war, and it's going to be bad. We're going to be actually, while Europe and even South America seem to be progressing and elevating and maturing economically, politically, philosophically, all those kinds of things, we're now possibly on the precipice of going back in time and becoming a third world country, while the rest of the guys all get it smart, get the right idea. We don't want that to happen. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the show. Really appreciate you listening to the Allman Report on this beautiful Wednesday evening on News Talk STL. Ethan Valencia, thanks a ton for being with us. And you guys, too. It's Common Sense Radio.